Notice there's no 1010 Sampanfol und Dutch Klaft Bile attached, only the transcript comment analysis and transcript analysis files. I'll proceed with creating completely new character names that feel natural and haven't appeared in the uploaded materials. My husband said it with a smile. That's the part nobody warns you about. Not the words themselves, it's the smile. Easy, unbothered, like he was commenting on the weather. Like I was the weather. Something predictable. Something that would pass. We were standing in the lobby of the Whitmore Hotel, 30 floors above downtown Atlanta, at the annual dinner for Hargrove and Associates, his firm, his colleagues, his world, the one I had quietly funded for 11 years while he built his name inside it. He had just introduced me to a woman named Cassandra, not as his wife, as someone you might recognize from the foundation events. He said it with one hand on the small of her back and the other wrapped around a glass of scotch that I had, without thinking, picked up for him from the bar 10 minutes earlier. I stood there holding my own glass of sparkling water. I don't drink at his work events, he prefers it that way, and I watched his thumb move in a small circle against the fabric of her dress. Cassandra smiled at me. It was a careful smile. The kind you practice. I said it was nice to meet her. My voice came out completely level, which surprised me. Then someone called his name from across the room, and he was already turning, already moving, and he said over his shoulder, loud enough for the people nearest to us to hear, "Elena, don't wait up, and please don't do that thing where you text me every hour. It makes you look insecure." Someone laughed. A short, uncomfortable sound. Then a few more. I stood very still. I had been standing very still for 11 years. I was exceptionally good at it. I set my sparkling water down on the tray of a passing server, picked up my coat from the check-in, and walked out of the Whitmore Hotel. I did not look for him to say goodbye. I did not text him on the drive home. I did not cry until I was inside our house. My house, though I had spent 11 years forgetting that. And then I only cried for about 4 minutes because I had a lot to do. I want to tell you something first, before I get into what happened next. I want to tell you why I was still there. Why a woman with a graduate degree in accounting and her name on a commercial property portfolio and a CPA license framed on her office wall had spent 11 years becoming someone who got publicly mocked by her own husband and then quietly went home. The answer is not simple. It never is. My name is Elena Marsh. I am 41 years old. I grew up in Decatur, Georgia, the daughter of a woman who ran a catering business out of our kitchen, and a father who kept the books for 3 different churches on a volunteer basis, because he said numbers were a form of honesty. I learned early that money is not a subject you discuss at the table. You manage it. You respect it. You do not let it become a source of conflict. I met my husband Daniel when I was 27. He was charming in the way that certain men are charming, fully, completely in a way that makes you feel like the sun has decided to shine specifically on you. He was an associate at a mid-sized consulting firm, smart, ambitious, funny when he wanted to be. We got married 18 months after we met. My father walked me down the aisle of Beulah Baptist Church and whispered, "You sure?" into my hair, and I laughed because I thought he was joking. I don't think he was joking. The first few years were genuinely good. I was building my client list. Daniel was climbing his firm. We bought a house in Buckhead. My down payment, his name first on the deed because the mortgage broker suggested it and I didn't push back. I filed our taxes every year, managed our investment accounts, maxed both our Roth IRAs and tracked every dollar that came in and went out of our household. Daniel made a good salary. I made more. This was not something we discussed. Around year 4, he started working with a partner named Marcus, who had a certain lifestyle: Amex Black, box seats at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, dinners at Bones on a Tuesday. Daniel wanted that lifestyle. I understood ambition, so I restructured our budget to support it. I increased what I called the business development line item. I told myself it was an investment in his trajectory, which would eventually benefit us both. By year 7, I had 3 commercial properties in my LLC, a solid roster of corporate accounting clients, and a husband who had stopped asking how much things cost because he had stopped needing to know. I handled it. That was the arrangement, even though no one had ever said so out loud. By year 9, I knew about Cassandra. Not everything. Not yet. But I knew the shape of it. The late Tuesday evenings, the conference in Nashville that I looked up and discovered had ended 2 days before he came home, the way he flinched slightly when his personal phone buzzed at dinner. I'm an accountant. I see patterns. I read discrepancies the way other people read expressions. I didn't confront him immediately. This is the part that confused people later when they found out. Why did you stay quiet? Why didn't you act? Because I was gathering. There is a difference between knowing and being able to prove. There is a difference between suspecting your husband of financial infidelity and being able to document it clearly enough that no lawyer in the state of Georgia can argue around it. I knew this. I am, as I mentioned, an accountant, so I stayed quiet. I went to his dinners. I picked up his scotch from the bar. I filed our taxes and I started, very carefully, very quietly, separating what was mine. It took me 14 months. The night he mocked me in front of his colleagues was not the beginning of the end. It was the moment I decided the end had already come, and I was ready to close the books. I drove home from the Whitmore. Our house is a 4-bedroom Craftsman in Buckhead with a wraparound porch and a kitchen that took us 2 years to renovate. My kitchen, my renovation budget, my contractor relationship, because Daniel had no patience for those conversations. I went to my home office and I opened my laptop and I called my attorney. Her name is Vivienne Cole. She is 54 years old. She went to Emory Law, and she has the kind of quiet that makes opposing counsel nervous. I had hired her 9 months earlier, not to file anything, just to have the conversation, just to understand where I stood. She picked up on the second ring. It was 11:15 at night. "Tell me you're ready," she said. "I'm ready," I said. "Monday morning," she said. "Don't change anything before then. Don't move money. Don't change passwords. Just go home and sleep." I almost laughed. I was already home. But I understood what she meant. Do not tip your hand. Do not give him a reason to move faster than you. I slept better that night than I had in 2 years. Daniel came home at 2 in the morning. I heard the front door, heard him in the kitchen, heard the television go on downstairs. I lay in bed and looked at the ceiling and thought about a conversation I'd had 6 weeks earlier with a forensic accountant named Howard Briggs, who had looked at the documents I brought him. 3 years of business expense records from Daniel's firm, our joint credit card statements, and the mortgage documents on a condo in Midtown, and said quietly, "Mrs. Marsh, your husband has been running personal expenses through a business account that is partially in your name." Partially in my name. Because 4 years ago, Daniel had asked me to co-sign on a business credit account for his consulting side work, and I had done it because I trusted him and because I understood the tax advantages. I had not checked that account in 14 months because it fed into a statement I didn't receive directly. Howard Briggs had found $94,000 in charges over 26 months. Hotel stays. Dinners. A weekend in Charleston. Flights to New York. A piece of jewelry from a store on Peachtree Road that I had never seen and never received. The account was partially in my name, which meant that when those charges showed up, I was technically a co-debtor. I want you to understand what it felt like to sit across from Howard Briggs and look at those numbers. I build financial pictures for a living. I understand exactly what those figures represent. Not just the money, but the sustained, deliberate effort required to move that much through a single account over 2 years without your spouse noticing. The planning involved, the casual confidence it takes to sign your wife's name to debt you're using to fund another life. I folded the documents very neatly. I thanked Howard for his time. I drove to a Starbucks 2 miles away and sat in my car and called my mother and told her I needed her to pray for me, not because I was in trouble, but because I was about to do something that required more steadiness than I currently felt. My mother prayed for me over the phone for 6 minutes. Then she said, "Baby, your father always said your name belongs on things that are yours. Make sure it does." Then she asked if I wanted her to bring over her brisket, because she believes food is how you prepare for hard things. I said yes. She came the next Saturday, and I did not tell her everything, but I told her enough, and we sat at my kitchen table, and she held my hand and didn't say a word for a long time. That was the steadiness I needed. Monday morning came. Vivian filed the petition. Daniel was served at his office at 11:40 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because Vivian's process server sent confirmation. I was in a client meeting when the notification came through, and I excused myself for 2 minutes, read the message, and went back to explaining quarterly estimated tax payments. I changed the locks that afternoon. I want to be precise about this. I changed the locks on my house. The property at 44117 Brookhaven Drive is titled solely in my name. It had been since year 3 of our marriage, when I refinanced to pull equity for my first property purchase, and the title company noted that Daniel's credit profile at the time made a sole owner structure more advantageous. Daniel had signed off without reading the full document. I had read every page. He arrived home at 6:15 that evening, and his key did not work. I watched from my home office window. He tried the key 3 times. Then he stepped back and looked at the house, actually looked at it like he was seeing it for the first time, and took out his phone. My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Then he sent a text. "What is happening? Call me right now." I sent one text back. "Your attorney will be in touch with mine. Please do not come to this property." He rang the doorbell 4 times. My neighbor Patricia answered her own front door. She had apparently been watching from her porch swing, because Patricia misses nothing, and walked down her driveway to where Daniel was standing and said something to him that I couldn't hear. Patricia is 68, retired, and spent 30 years as a family court mediator for the state of Georgia. She is also the person who had noticed, 8 months earlier, an unfamiliar car parked in front of my house on 3 consecutive Tuesday afternoons when I was working late downtown, and had texted me a photo of the license plate because she thought I might want to know. I had wanted to know. Whatever Patricia said to Daniel that evening he left, he didn't come back. The next several weeks were not dramatic in the way people imagine when they hear the word divorce. There were no screaming matches in the driveway. There were no broken dishes. There was a great deal of paperwork, which I handled with a kind of focused calm that my therapist later told me was a healthy response and not, as I had briefly worried, evidence of emotional dissociation. Daniel's attorney sent a letter suggesting that my properties, the 3 commercial units in my LLC, were marital assets subject to division. Vivian sent a response that included the formation documents for my LLC, which predated our marriage by 2 years, a letter from my CPA confirming that no marital funds had been used in any subsequent property acquisition, and an itemized list of $94,000 in improper charges on the joint business account. The conversation about my properties did not come up again. What did come up was the business account. Daniel's attorney argued that the charges were legitimate business expenses. Howard Briggs had already prepared a 30-page analysis demonstrating why they were not. The hotel in Charleston, for instance, occurred on a weekend when Daniel had told me he was in a client strategy session in Birmingham. The flight records did not support Birmingham. The hotel records supported Charleston. There is no elegant way to explain that discrepancy. His attorney stopped arguing about the business account in week 4. We reached a settlement 6 weeks after I filed. Daniel received his personal investment accounts, his car, and his clothing. He received no interest in my properties, no claim on my business income, and no spousal support because Georgia courts do not typically award support to a higher earning spouse who has committed financial misconduct. And Howard Briggs had documented the misconduct with the kind of specificity that made Daniel's attorney visibly uncomfortable in mediation. He also received the bill for $94,000 in improper charges, restructured as a debt owed to the LLC per the settlement agreement. I am told he did not take this well. I was not present for that part of the conversation. The settlement was signed on a Thursday afternoon. That evening, Patricia came over with a bottle of sparkling cider. She doesn't drink either. And we sat on my wraparound porch, and she told me about the first time she had watched a couple she knew dissolve their marriage and what she had learned from it, which was that the ending of a bad thing is not a failure but a correction. She had watched hundreds of families renegotiate themselves in courtrooms. She had seen women rebuild from much less than what I had. "You kept your name on what matters," she said. That's not a small thing. My mother showed up an hour later with brisket and cornbread, and my sister Dara, who immediately started talking about what I should do with Daniel's former closet space, which I found so unexpectedly funny that I sat on my kitchen floor and laughed until I cried. And then cried until I laughed, while Patricia patted my shoulder and my mother refilled everyone's glasses, and Dara started measuring the closet with the flashlight on her phone. I want to tell you about the morning 2 months after the settlement was finalized. I had taken on a new corporate client, a regional logistics company that needed to restructure their accounting after a partner buyout. The engagement was significant, both in terms of complexity and fees. My firm, which I run with 2 associates out of a suite in Buckhead, had grown by 30% in the 2 years I'd been quietly preparing for what came next. Because when you know a disruption is coming, you build your reserves. On that particular morning, I was presenting the restructuring plan to their board of directors in a conference room on the 22nd floor of a building on Peachtree Street. The presentation had taken me 3 weeks to prepare. It was precise and clear, and represented exactly the kind of work I'm capable of when I'm not spending significant energy managing someone else's fragile self-image. Halfway through the presentation, my phone buzzed silently in my pocket. A notification from my property management app. The lease on Unit 3 of my Midtown commercial property had just been renewed at a 12% rate increase. The tenant had agreed without negotiation. I finished my presentation. The board approved the engagement unanimously. I drove home through afternoon traffic with the windows down and the radio on, and I thought about what my father used to say, that numbers are a form of honesty. That they tell you exactly where you are, if you're willing to read them clearly. Here is where I am. I own 3 commercial properties outright. My firm has 7 active corporate clients and a waitlist. My retirement accounts are fully funded through age 70 at current projections. My house on Brookhaven Drive has a wraparound porch where I drink coffee every morning, and Patricia waves at me from her porch swing, and we discuss the neighborhood and sometimes nothing at all. And it is the most peaceful hour of my day. Here's where Daniel is. I don't know exactly. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that Cassandra and he are no longer together. I've heard he's left Hargrove and Associates. I heard this with the same level of interest I bring to news about traffic on the highway I no longer take to get to his office parties, which is to say I noted it and moved on. I did run into him once, about 4 months after the settlement. It was at a coffee shop near Emory, of all places. He was sitting alone with a laptop. He looked up and saw me, and for a moment neither of us said anything. Then he said, "You look good." I said, "I know." I ordered my coffee and walked out. I've been asked since then whether I regret the years, whether I wish I had moved sooner, said more, given less. It's a reasonable question. I've sat with it. Here is the honest answer. I don't regret the years because I was not passive during them. I was building. My LLC, my client roster, my reserves, my records. I was reading every document that came across my desk, including the ones I wasn't supposed to notice. I was learning, very carefully, the difference between what had my name on it and what did not, and making sure that what mattered most had my name on it clearly. The quiet was not surrender. It was preparation. There is a specific kind of freedom that comes from knowing your numbers. Not just knowing them, understanding them. Understanding what they represent, where they come from, what they protect. My father understood this. My mother, who built a catering business on handwritten order sheets and a second-hand commercial mixer and never borrowed a dollar she didn't plan to repay by Thursday, understood this better than anyone. I understood it too. I had just, for a while, let someone else's noise distract me from acting on what I knew. I'm not distracted anymore. Patricia asked me last spring if I was dating anyone. I told her I was focusing on the logistics client restructuring and considering a 4th property acquisition near the Beltline. She gave me the look that 68-year-old women who have spent 30 years in family court give you when they know exactly what you're doing but love you enough not to push. "When you're ready," she said. When I'm ready, I agreed. My name is Elena Marsh. I am 41 years old. I own 3 commercial properties in Atlanta, a craftsman home in Buckhead with a wraparound porch, and a firm that I built with 11 years of discipline and 4 years of strategic patience. I pick up my own coffee. I drink it on my own porch. On Tuesday afternoons, which used to feel like a held breath, I now schedule my most important calls, the ones where I need to be completely clear-headed, fully present, accountable to no one's schedule but my own. No one laughs at me anymore. And on the mornings when I sit on that porch with the Atlanta skyline just visible between the oak trees, and the neighborhood is quiet, and Patricia waves from her swing, I think about what my father said. Numbers are a form of honesty, so is knowing exactly what you own. I've thought a lot about what made the difference. Not the attorneys, not the forensic accountant, not even the documents I spent 14 months collecting. Those were tools. What made the difference was something quieter than all of that. It was the decision to see clearly. Daniel didn't lose because I was clever, though I like to think I was. He lost because of a pattern he had been building for years without realizing patterns can be read. Every charge on that business account, every Tuesday he came home an hour later than he said, every document he signed without reading, those weren't mistakes in isolation, they were a picture. And I am someone who reads pictures made of numbers for a living. He handed me the evidence himself, one line item at a time, because he had decided I wasn't paying attention. That assumption, that I wasn't watching, was the most expensive thing he ever bought. I think about the version of me standing in that hotel lobby, holding a glass of sparkling water I hadn't wanted, listening to my own husband use my name like a punchline. I don't feel sorry for her. She already knew what she needed to know. She just hadn't decided yet that knowing was enough permission to act. That night she decided, there is something I want to say carefully, because I've had people ask me whether what I did was cold, whether the 14 months of quiet preparation, the forensic accountant, the attorney on retainer, whether that was calculated in a way that makes me less sympathetic. And my honest answer is, yes, it was calculated. Completely. And I would do it exactly the same way. Because here is what I've come to understand about how consequences actually work, not in some abstract sense, but in the specific, documentable way I watch them unfold in my own life. Actions build structures. The structure Daniel built, charge by charge and lie by lie, had weight, it had legal exposure, it had a paper trail. I didn't create his consequences. He created them through 11 years of choices, and what I did was simply refuse to absorb them on his behalf any longer. That's not coldness, that's clarity. The hardest part wasn't the legal process. It was the 18 months before that, choosing every single day to stay steady. To keep building my firm, keep documenting, keep my name on what was mine, and not let the anger I was fully entitled to feel push me into moving before I was ready. Anger without strategy burns the person holding it. I had watched that happen to people I cared about. I was not going to let it happen to me. Patricia told me once, sitting on my porch after it was all done, that the family she had seen recover well from hard endings all had one thing in common. They had kept something that was entirely their own throughout the marriage. A skill, a practice, a piece of ground they never handed over. For me, it was the work, the numbers, the discipline of building something with my name on it that no one else's choices could dissolve. That is the thing I would tell anyone who was somewhere in the middle of a situation like mine. Not to be patient. Exactly. Patience for its own sake is just suffering with better posture. But to build. Quietly, consistently, with the understanding that what you build with integrity cannot be argued away in a mediation room. What you know cannot be taken from you. What you document speaks when you decide you're ready to let it. I am 41 years old. My name is on what matters. And every Tuesday morning, when I sit on that porch with my coffee, I am exactly where I chose to be. That's not luck. That's the result of deciding, one ordinary day at a time, to take yourself seriously.